Hello, and welcome to another episode of the SENDhelp podcast. And today I'm with Sue, and we are going to be talking about lots of different things, I suppose, but mainly around the school system and what's going wrong with the school system, necessarily not teachers, but actually what the problem is and why it seems that sometimes teachers can't help, and just everything around that, really. Just coming from working in the field from both angles and just having an open discussion, really, about what needs to change, what can change, and what's really unrealistic to change, basically. But I'll hand over to Sue, and she can tell you a bit about her background and her experiences. And yeah, she's very experienced in this field. So yeah, hand over. Here you go, to Sue.
Hi. Well, I am firstly a mum. I have two young daughters. One is 11 and she's in year seven. And I have an 8-year-old who's in year three, although she's about the height of a year seven. I don't know where she got her tonus from. Um, my oldest is ASD, ADHD, and she has a PDA profile. Oh, and bonus dyslexia. She's currently registered in a special needs space in a local mainstream school. She's at home at the moment, because that's just not working out for her. And the 8-year-old has happily just started a new primary school and is settled for the first time in a long time. Previously, I have worked as a SENTA, in a number of different varied settings, from a local authority school to a standalone academy, an academy that was part of a MAP, and an independent specialist school. I had to leave my job when my daughter phase transitioned from primary school into secondary school because, as we know, lose all wraparound care, if that was even available in the first place, depending on your primary setting. You lose wraparound care. And when you have a child who can't be left on their own, clearly that's not an option. Year seven or not, she can't stay on her own. Someone's got to be with her. And that falls on me, despite asking the authority for help with care. But obviously, a SEND child operates in a vacuum, not as part of a family or a wider community.
Yeah. Do you think so? That's so. Well, it's such. Do you know what it is? It's such a common theme of having such a vast knowledge and experience, and then having your child and having your own issues, and then having to put that knowledge and experience aside to then start. I always say at the bottom as a parent, without it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you've done before, does it? When you've got a send child, because as you said, it's in a
No.
vacuum, and it just makes you feel. It made me feel. I question myself every day. I was like, did I actually do this? Was I a good manager? What, like, nothing I'm
Yeah.
saying is even reaching them anymore. Like, I don't understand. Like, I've got to
And
learn this all again.
the worst bit is you literally become just parent, you become mum.
Hmm.
Like, to the local authority, I am mum. That's it. I'm not Sue. I'm not person to be listened to, human being. I am just mum. So every meeting you're in, what do you think about that, mum? What's mum got to say about that? And I'm like, hi, I'm an actual person. Lost my identity completely.
It's almost like they think that we don't work.
Yeah.
And that, or again, because they know that we ain't at the moment, doesn't mean that we didn't. Do you know?
Yeah.
It's like the audacity to think that everyone, treat everyone the same in that respect is crazy. Like, I've heard people that have worked for like incendias that have gone into
Yeah.
meetings that have been mugged off in a meeting, but because of their job, they couldn't say anything, but have still been treated like that. I would be going mad if I
Yeah.
worked for something like incendias. I'd be like, are you crazy? I'm advising
Yeah.
you. I'm shutting you down. Yes.
Yeah.
But it shows,
Yeah.
doesn't it? It doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. You do.
What
You lose you.
Yeah. So you've had to have a home as well, haven't you? So that's another element of
Yeah. At
losing
the
yourself.
moment, yeah. So she started in a base. So basically, we had a 72-week long EHCP process rather than the legal 20. By the time she got a school place, all of the specialist provisions were over pupil allocated numbers, which means I would have had to go to tribunal to get her in. We were 2 days before the end of term when we got her school place. Now, because she's got a history of emotionally based school avoidance, I didn't want her out of education for a prolonged period while we went to tribunal. So I okayed the base. I had my reservations at the time, but had conversations with them that were reassuring. She's since gone to the base. Her EHCP provision's not being met. She's got a provision in there for a one-to-one. TA to work with her. She'd been out of the classroom for 2 years previously. So year 5, she was a corridor kid. Year 6, she had a one-to-one and an AV1 robot to work with her in school. So sort
What
of asking
robot?
an AV1 robot. So it's like a telepresence robot. It's a little robot head that sits in the classroom. And
Yeah.
my child sat in a different room in school with a tablet, and she could control the robot. So she could look around the classroom, she could change the colour on its head to ask questions, change its facial expression, she could answer questions through it. So she was in the classroom, but she could control the volume of the classroom better than the teacher could. Um, so, it was a bit much chucking her in, sort of no support, no one-to-one, but we went for it, we tried it out. We hit about, like, sort of every week I'm asking, have we got the one-to-one? Have we got the one-to-one? Have we sorted the one-to-one? And they're coming back saying, well, we're trying to get funding from the local authority. We're trying to get funding from the local authority. So I contacted around October half term, contacted the local authority and said, the school are trying to get funding. Can you let me know that funding's sorted? So they got back in touch saying, well, we've got this extra policy for funding for one-to-ones in base settings, which, given that all provision outlined in an EHCP under the Children and Families Act should be in place from the day one of that EHCP being in place, that extra step is unlawful. That shouldn't be there. If that one-to-one is on that EHCP, it should be funded straight away. So first problem. Second problem is that school had applied late for that funding.
Mhm.
That funding miraculously was signed off and okayed about 2 days after I'd sent in a complaint to the local authority. The school then waited until that money, although they'd been given confirmation that money is coming, school then waited until that money was actually in their bank to even advertise the position. Well, to even discuss with HR about advertising the position. And
So
then HR had to okay everything.
did they have to? Did they get? So did you? I think you touched it. Yeah, you got extra funding for the one-to-one because just to point out that a normal EHCP only covers, I think, a max 11 grand, which would mean the
Yeah,
school would have to fund the other costs. But I think in some cases, I think maybe like yours, that they make exceptions where they fund all of it and they pay for the
yeah,
one-to-one. Yeah.
yeah. So then we're sort of, we still don't have a one-to-one. They advertised, they got, I think, 3 applicants. And the one that they had said wasn't right for Matilda, which, fair enough,
Mm.
fine. Don't employ the wrong person for my child. But this process should have started way sooner.
Mhm.
Um, there's also, as I say, a lot of people will agree with let's wait for the money to hit the account. But when there's a child at the centre of it all and the
Yeah, it's
school
not good.
is
Yeah,
run,
you're
yeah,
missing the child in all of this, and I think that it gets missed quite a lot, doesn't it? That in the back and forth, the year for the HCP, there's a child that's suffering in the middle that no one's picking up apart from the parents and saying, "Look, let's just do something of the kindness of our heart until that time." You know,
yeah,
and not make it
yeah.
about funds
And
or make.
I'll fully admit I'm quite petty. So I looked on Company's House for the Multi Academies Trust that runs her school. And on their last accounts, they had, I think it was over £4 million in sort of cash assets. Um, and they couldn't afford a TA, a one-to-one TA for a child who wasn't learning. She was failing. I mean, I got calls because she barricaded herself in a room because she wouldn't leave the lobby. That was as far as she got into school. This was a child who was quite clearly struggling. And they couldn't fund it. So we reached breaking point. She'd done her first half term was brilliant because girls have this amazingly extended ability to mask because they're driven to fit in. Women and girls with autism are driven to fit in. The second half term, I was getting, well, she hasn't been to this lesson. And I was like, okay, well, so she was dysregulated because she wants to learn, but she's got PDA, so she's going to demand a void if she feels unsafe. So what did you do to make her feel safe? And because at that point they hadn't had the PDA training that they should have had, they didn't realise that this was all sort of interlinked. This wasn't a child who wouldn't, it was a child who couldn't. And then over Christmas, she hit burnout. Spent most of the Christmas holidays in a room. So she got a history of selective mutism that she worked really hard to sort of, make her feel safe to speak in the majority of situations. And she went back to a lot of the selective mutism. She wasn't using as much language. She's had like skills regressions. So we've always had on school days, she's 11 years old. On school days, she's stressed. She doesn't have the adaptive functioning to dress herself. So I dress her. But we've had more things that she can't do by herself anymore. So after Christmas, she didn't go back. And I emailed school, obviously, it's an absence, and explained the burnout. And they started recording the absences as unauthorised rather than illness or disability related. And everything escalated, and took her to the GP, and he's referred to CAMS. Now, the GP's about as disgusted as I am at how much of her EHCP that they're failing to meet. And he said, don't send her back until the support's in place. Fair enough. I'm following the GP.
Yeah. Let's touch it. So, from your experience in schools, how much of it is? What do you think the problem is about when that happens with an EHCP, where school just refuse to not well appear to refuse to adapt or even action anything on EHCP?
I think there's three aspects. So there's the mindset aspect,
Mhm.
there's the training aspect, and there's the funding aspect, and they're all linked.
Yeah,
Because you can't change the mindset without the training, and you can't have the training without the funding. So
that's a
the mind,
very good point of why it's all entangled. Yeah.
yeah, the mindset from sort of my point of view with my child, the mindset is that that everything is a behaviour, not so her refusing to go to lessons is a behaviour. It's not a cry for I'm really scared and I need some control, so I'm going to grab my control and I'm going to be okay. To them, that's a behaviour. Now, once they'd actually had the PDA training, they were better able then to see, oh, actually, no, that's her anxiety. That's not a behaviour, that's communication. But that training had to be funded from somewhere. Through the HCP, through schools, whatever. Now, at the moment in mainstream schools, there is so little SEND training that
But
that
when,
mindset's not going to change.
on the subject of training, just to the devil's advocate out here, but there is the training out to offer is out there. The schools just don't necessarily have it on their radar or want to include that into their curriculum. So
Hmm.
what I mean about that is there is so many companies out there, like my company, like there's lots of I can name loads that would go up into schools quite happily and offer training and offer the teachers all of that, all for free, all offer the syllabus away
Yeah.
from all of it, but they won't even accept it in. So what's the issue there?
Well, this is where the mindset comes in, because there is in a lot of places this mindset that, "Oh, why bother? Why
Right.
bother? Because these kids are going to be really difficult to teach."
Yeah.
And that doesn't come from teachers on the ground. And
No.
that doesn't necessarily come from senior leadership. But a lot of schools these days are being run as businesses.
Mhm.
Have up above all of the staff who sit in the school and deal with the day to day, there is a CEO who's in charge of the finances. And that CEO may not have been in the classroom for a number of years. For example, the CEO who runs the MAT that runs my child's school
Mm.
hasn't been in a classroom since 5 years before my child was born. That's 15, 16 years. They
Yeah.
don't know. They're sat in their office deciding where the money goes, and they don't know. There's also, I mean, there is also the case that we put people into the Senko position with no training.
But they don't need to do
uh,
it, do they? For free, they can do it up
yeah,
to 3 years, can't they?
yeah,
So
yeah. So one
yeah.
school I work put a head of year in as a Senko. He had 2 years to complete the training, but they put him in. And we aren't talking about a head of year who'd worked in amazing SEND schools or amazing mainstream schools that had a really good, their Ofsteds for SEND were amazing. It was just that he fancied the job, applied for it and got it, and was probably a bit cheaper than a qualified Senko. And he had 2 years to do the job, to do the qualification, but he was in the job with no knowledge.
Well, again, you've already got responsibility for like the whole school. Sometimes the school set up that I have one Senko responsible for every SEN kid and
Yeah,
problem in that school. And if you've not got the training and you go, here's your first job, and you've got all these angry parents, you're not going to do well. And you're just not.
yeah,
It's not gonna.
yeah,
It's gonna take a very unique person to be able to swallow that, learn, and do it
yeah,
as they're going. And be able, you
yeah,
should. It's unfair in that sense. I'll highlight it. And again, I don't really defend that. But actually, I do defend Senkos in that sense a lot because I don't think it's fair because there is not one, there's not enough of them, and two, the training's not provided before. I think a Senko
yeah,
should all be as well. Another risk that we've got is someone for something like Send needs. I would think should be an outside person. So it should be an external person that's attached to the school but has independent reporting. So that
yeah,
there's so many factors with Senkos that are going wrong and it's setting them up to fail. I feel
yeah,
that even if you go through all of the types of solutions but there's no training, get in there with all the parents, money to smash it, then what? Like, there's no
yeah,
further, you know what I mean? You've done the job and then there's no further support for that. Like,
yeah,
no other Senko's going to get put in your place. You're not going to get a backup team. Again, if the head teacher or whatever is not thinking it's a big enough issue. Another one important thing I would say about the difference, and I would vouch for this being when I was a registered manager compared to being a support worker, they're in the same field, doesn't mean it's the same job. A head teacher's
yeah,
job is completely different to even like a Senko job or a senior
yeah,
leader. So their job is business, as you highlight. Their job is completely irrelevant from the children in some cases, and it will be a lot on staff management. So again, if they're looking at their staff burnt out from all their kids that are additional needs that they can't cope, a teacher's then going to go, right, well, this is, I need to be effective to do my job. My teachers need to be effective. And then that's where the attack comes on these kids, I think.
yeah, yeah. It's you see a lot as well. So without the leadership prioritizing send, a lot of teachers aren't going to.
Yeah.
And you can see a difference. So between early career teachers and teachers who've been doing it a while, shall we say. So the mainstream standalone academy I worked at, we literally had sort of a little alleyway away from the school where we go and smoke or vape at lunchtime. And it was literally like an informal send training session because I'd be out there with the ECTs going, I don't know what to do with this kid and no one is helping me. So we'd sort of talk it through. What behaviours are they showing? Do you know if they've got a diagnosis? Like, have you checked for any HCP or checked on their SEND support paperwork and stuff? Okay, well, why don't you try this? Why don't you try this? On our lunch breaks with ECTs, and they were actively coming and saying, you know, we need this, we need help. Um, And I don't know if it is a mindset difference and it's two mindsets. It's that I want to do something for this child. The other mindset difference is your job title doesn't matter to me. Your knowledge does.
Mm.
Because a lot of teachers who've been in the role for a while won't listen to a TA. In mainstreams, that
Oh,
is definitely
100%.
not the same in
100%. Yeah.
specialist settings. Specialist settings, you're on a level with the majority of the staff. It's like, no, we are a team. We have equal investment. We have parity. But in mainstreams, and particularly, as I say, with staff who've been in it for a while, that's not the case.
No, and I think I find that as well. Again, and it's a shame that it could be it could only be three of them that have that mindset. But if they've been there ages, and one of them's like the head teacher, that's the thing of the school. And
Yeah,
that's when we was going into school. So there was a school that we were to get into and have meetings with, of course. But again, it had to be someone we knew. It wasn't someone that that was just from an email or whatever. But
yeah,
that was one of the things that came up quite a lot was that. And when they had a really good culture at this school, had really good culture, you can see it, and especially looking at speaking to us as well. But they're saying that again, there's certain teachers, even they were saying in that school that even if she was saying as the head teacher that she has got no chance of getting them to change their teaching. And that
yeah.
is one of the main issues about even when they go to training, that half of them don't even want to do it and don't believe in it. And it's about kind of, it's almost like saying that you kind of have to wait it out. And there's a certain bit of the schools that you just have to wait out because of the old generations. There's not much you can do. And there's also,
But it's that don't believe in it. So what we need is the training to be based in empirical evidence, basically, to be able to say, no, these conditions do exist. Here's your evidence. These strategies work. Here's your evidence. Because teachers like information. That's why they're teachers. They like facts. That's why they're teachers. So if you back up the training that you're given with that information, with that, have a look. Look, we've got it all from the Education Endowment Fund. We've sorted everything out. It's all backed up in science. They're more likely to be receptive to that. Whereas if you've got a Senko who's 2 weeks into the job, never worked with a SEND child before in their life, standing at the front going, dyslexia means problems reading, autism means problems of social
Yeah.
communication, and just telling you things but giving you no strategies and not backing anything up with any kind of evidence,
But
then
in this day in this day and age, again, that's another because I know we're thrown into it being parents, but if you've got a classroom and five of them have got it in there, you've already learning every day. You're just choosing not to. So it's not hard
yeah.
to maybe look on TikTok and see a strategy and then try it offhand in your classroom. So you know,
Yeah,
I don't
this is
see
the
what.
thing though. This is like the other difference with the ECT is they've got access to things like Instagram, TikTok, all that sort of stuff. The older teachers who've been there a while haven't.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
point. A very good
they
point.
have they have different places to get their information from,
Mhm.
and it's great that the teachers that are coming up have that at their fingertips. You know, pop into Chat GPT. What strategies can I use for this behaviour presentation? And that's all there. Teachers who've been doing it quite a while, and I'm not saying this is a blanket statement because I know some amazing teachers who've been doing it for a very long time and are very open to new suggestions, new ideas, new outlooks. But there are some that aren't, and the ones who tend to not be are teachers who've been doing it a while and are stuck in their way, stuck in their rut. And it's them that are going to need the mindset change. And for them, that comes from, like I say, evidence and things. They're not going to believe something they've seen on a TikTok.
No,
Even
yeah,
if it
that's
even
true.
if it works, then they're not
Yeah,
they're going to look at it and go, no, 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 no. But if you can say, well, Edwards and Edwards 1990 says this, you've given them that proof that it works. Or if you can say, well, this, like, everywhere's part of Multi Academies Trust. If you can send that person, if you put a strategy in place in one school and it works, send people to that other school in your map to go and have a look at that strategy that's worked. Look outside your map. This is
yeah,
half the problem, that we are so stuck in now the business. We can't possibly go and look at how another school's doing it because they're not in our map, they're in another map. Well, why? If they're doing it well and you're not doing it well, go and look at them, whether they're in your mat or not. It doesn't matter.
yeah. It's a lot of competition, isn't it? Local competition as well. The schools, they're all connected. There'll be like certain schools connected to other schools, the primary schools and feeder schools and secondary schools. They become a clique, and they won't go outside that clique to
Yeah,
look at the other ones.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
there's a
I
lot. Of,
mean, we've got, when the independent school that I was working at, they opened up a training offer. So the reason I went to work there, basically, when I was at the standalone mat, I recognised that I needed a little bit. I've been heavy on the ASD side of things, and MLD, SLD, PMLD at the school I was at before. I knew that I was lacking in ADHD. I wanted to make sure that I was there because there was a high percentage of kids with ADHD. So I asked for training, and they found a course at this school. So I toddled along to this course, and it was catered, so that's a win. But also it was run by their in-house psychologist. It covered ADHD and executive function. So it wasn't just your standard give them a fidget and they'll be fine. It was, here are some real strategies that will work to support these children. It lasted the full afternoon, total like immersive. In fact, no, full day, total immersive opportunity to ask questions and everything, run ideas past this psychologist. Like, I've got this child who, would this help? And he'd expand on it. It was an amazing course. And then at the end of the course, I had a chat with the Senko of the school, sort of talked about like longitudinal pathways, where the kids end up, all that sort of stuff. And she talked me through what the school was like. And I walked out the door going, I want to work there. I
that's
want to
good.
work
Yeah,
in that school. So as soon as the job came up, that was it. I went and worked there. But that training, that entire day's training with a psychologist in a special school that are doing it day in, day out, day in, day out, how much would you put that at cost wise?
so the council paying it, they probably paid thousands for that.
It was a standalone academy. That training was £25, right? There
Wow.
is no excuse for schools to not access
Well, it's what I'm
that.
saying, yeah, between the companies that can do it anyway and and the ones that you just said, £25.
Yeah, yeah. But there's no excuse. Like, why were they not sending? So in that school, that was the school where TAs went in on inset days, so
Okay.
effectively had no training. Why were they not sending everyone? There were about 12 of us. Couldn't we all have gone?
Yeah,
It was amazing. The training's out there, and the training's out there in places that you wouldn't expect, like a different school that's not in your mat. Do it. Like I say, if there's a school that's like, oh, this is amazing. We've just, I don't know, boosted our GCSE results for our ADHD kids by 25%, right? Why is not then every school, every secondary school going, right, well, we're going to go and we're going to find out what they've done. Share the information.
yeah. It's
Everything's siloed. Now we've got academies, everything is siloed. This academy does this great, siloed, not going to share it with that academy.
I
It's,
think, yeah, I think down here, I think it's even estate schools are a bit like that as well.
yeah,
And I think the way, if you get marks on the way that you're meant to get marks on as makes a school look good and what's a school successfully on paper, some kids don't fit that picture. And it's hard to
no,
go against that grain to go and kind of risk an opportunity of spending resources and time and training in an area that might not improve when you know
yeah,
that you could definitely improve in a different area. Does that make sense? So if by
yeah,
even trying to help sometimes SEN kids, you're then making your school look bad. So then that will then get worse people in for next. So I mean, it's almost shooting yourself in
yeah,
the foot, sort of, but it's still set up a bit like that, isn't it? And academies even further that problem because they don't need to share anything really if they don't want
yeah,
to. So like, it's not even something that could be like a state-run thing that goes into a curriculum that we all just deliver out. It's something that they've got and they've done, and it's up to them whether they want to deliver it. And then another academy, as you said, then has to be wanting to go to another academy to almost say,
yeah,
"Oh, you're better. We're better than you." And that's what it seems like, I suppose, at the top level when you're talking about it as a business, because of the business, having to have another business, it's not heard of. Like
yeah,
it just until I got into the
yeah,
Sen community, I never saw that. And now with Sen, it's really beneficial for every business to become like one super business if everything. Like, but
yeah,
it's still seemed as like no, no, no. And for teachers, they say that if a teacher, if a teacher keeps going complaining that they can't keep teach child out of the classroom, that teacher looks like a bad teacher when it's a Sen
hmm
need. And there's
yeah,
also, I'm not going to share it because people have shared to me in private, but there's also so many other factors that I'm aware of that are not related to SEN that are just about what happens to teachers in schools at the moment and the pressures they're under and what's been. So there's like again, then it's not as teachers are not free thinkers or free doers. I think what I've learned is they can't just action these things off the top of their classroom because they'll get in trouble for it.
yeah. Yeah, because you have to follow the academy standards and the academy's way, and you've got to set your lesson out this way. Don't
Mhm.
forget your learning objectives.
Yeah.
um, yeah, and it's like I said it. I think I've said it in a lot of schools that I've worked in. I know my child, like they have the learning objectives on the board. So today you're going to learn how a medieval castle works, and you're going to learn the jobs in the medieval castle. What they're not telling them is why.
Yeah.
Why do we need to learn this? Now, the government a few years ago released their sort of top, I think it's either 50 or 100 employability skills. Easy. Match it up. Tell my kid why she's learning it and she'll learn it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's impossible. And I genuinely do. Like I wrote an analogy the other day. Here we go. Because I do feel for teachers. So, right, teacher and let's say head or executive head in the office, right? Executive head teacher goes, right, we know you've worked exclusively in England, but this year you are taking 30 kids on an expedition to the Amazon rainforest. And the teacher's like, what? And the head's like, yeah, you'll be fine. Most of the kids have all the equipment that they need and they've got survival skills. And the teacher's like, but most of the kids. And the head goes, well, yeah, some of them are coming with a list of equipment that they need and the local authority are going to pay for it. The teacher's like, okay, and the rest? And he's like, oh, well, we've got no idea what they need and we've got to pay for it. So you need to keep it cheap. So the teacher's like, I can't really keep it cheap because that equipment could mean the difference between life and death. And the head's like, yeah, Ofsted wouldn't be super happy with a death. Maybe we can get the kids who've got the equipment from the LA to share their equipment. So like 2 kids could do like a 3-legged race in a pair like 3 hiking boots, because then it's only 1.5 hiking boots per child instead of 2. So there'll be more boots for everyone. And the teacher's like, that's like ridiculous. Every child deserves a pair of boots. And the head's like, yeah, but we don't have enough money for a full set of boots each. And the teacher says, okay, what about our £1 million reserve? And the head says, so anyway, good luck, send us a postcard. The teacher says, wait, can I get some like survival training or something? Because, this is a big responsibility. I'd like some survival training. And the head says, well, you can tie your shoelaces and that's a transferable skill. So you won't need help with all the climbing stuff. And the teacher's like, what? And he's like, well, we did find a brilliant course. The head says, we found a brilliant course on outdoor survival. It's like a week on the Yorkshire Moors with an ex-SAS guy, but it was really expensive. So we've booked you onto a 30-minute Zoom call with a guy called Tony who went camping in 1974. And the teacher's like, well, that's not enough. It's like the school down the road went to the Amazon last year and it was a real success. Can I at least go and talk to them about what they did and what I need to look out for and how I can keep these kids alive? And the head's like, well, no, they're not in our academy trust. I mean, you could go and talk to someone at St Hilda's because they went to Alton Towers last year and that was a real success. It's essentially the same. And the teacher's like, I can't do this. What you're asking is going to put children at risk. And the head says, well, if you don't get your flights booked, you're going to be on a disciplinary. And I don't think you want to risk your job over a silly little trip to the Amazon, do you? And the teacher's left with no choice because the teacher really likes living in a house and the teacher really likes feeding their children. And the teacher knows that if they leave, they're just going to get more of the same elsewhere anyway. So they go to the Amazon.
That's a very good analogy. That's good. It's great. And I actually think that's probably very quite accurate to conversations that do happen in schools
Yeah.
quite a lot. Yeah. It's so entwined. And as I said, that's a very good analogy, actually. I hope we'll get just to shorten that because I've explained it properly because where do you start with it? And then that's what I'm saying. Do they strengthen numbers that all the teachers just unite against the whole way of doing it? But then that's a risk because then if it doesn't work, then half of you are going to get out of the job. I know full well working in the school, something like when you're not the HR people, but you have the people that you pay to come into the meetings with you, them sort of people are very rife,
Yeah.
are unions. So you always have unions
Yeah.
because of that reason,
Unions. Yeah.
etc. So that, yeah, and it's just the question would be, why would you still want to become a teacher if that's the way that it's going to go? And that's disheartening because you want teachers to teach and you want teachers to want to help the SEN, and they know the ones that are coming up now know that's part of their classroom. But then knowing all the other things about it, and then knowing if you spoke to a teacher about the pressures on it, it's very off-putting, and it's very. I hope that doesn't cause a chain reaction down the line that then teachers are not wanting to come into the field at all because if they think they're caring about SEN, then they're not going into it. And then you're left with the teachers that don't care about SEN that will go into it happily and go with
Yeah.
how it is now.
There's a huge recruitment problem for teachers anyway. And there's a huge retention problem for teachers. And I can fully see why, because they are the front line. It's like, right, when you're electric, problem with your electric and you phone up and it's a call centre and you're angry and they're the front line, aren't they?
Yeah.
Teachers are. They're the front line. They're, for the most part, I genuinely think, trying to do their best and trying to do their best without the appropriate knowledge or training. So, for example, my child's teacher's dealing with their PDA. Yeah, PDA comes across as a child who doesn't want to, or a child who kicks off, or a child who runs away. It comes across as a series of behaviours. And until you know what's underneath that because you've had the training, that's all you're seeing and all you're handling is the behaviours. And it's the same across the board. If you don't know that, oh, ADHD causes problems with executive function, all you're seeing is that kid who's forgetting his pen every single lesson. And it's getting old. It's getting boring. If you understand that that kid's forgetting his pen because it's an executive dysfunction, he forgets to put his pen in his bag every morning, then you put things in place for that. You say, right, well, this is your pen for my class. It's your responsibility to put it here at the end of each lesson. He's still got the responsibility and he's still got a pen.
Yeah.
You put those things in place. But if you think it's just a kid who's just forgetting his pen every lesson, you're not going to bother. If you
If you
see
think of
my
it, but
kid,
even that, it's hard not to see that. What kid, did you know how much of effort that is to deliberately lose your pen every lesson just to wind the
yeah,
teacher up? Like, that's a
yeah,
stretch. Like, and to take it that personal, again, that's half the issue as well. Like, these, they take it like the behaviour's aimed at them, like they're not leading the class properly or keeping control of the class. So it's a direct response to them mismanaging it or them appearing too soft or them, and that's a
yeah,
bit another issue, isn't it? That needs to be addressed. But it's not about that. And that's what I'm saying. It comes across a lot of the times that these decisions and these detentions are just because the teacher says so. There's no other reasoning
yeah,
other than I've looked weak in that moment. And it's an ego thing. It just comes across as a massive, massive ego thing sometimes. And again, I've seen reports and SARS and it's written like that. And sometimes they put their personal opinion in the reports and it's written
yeah,
like that. Like, but again, that's like a training and like a wedding. But it does beg the
yeah,
question. Say that story you just said, if you was in that situation, wouldn't you as a teacher then say, well, I'm not doing my job then, it's not safe and I don't feel fully able to do my job, instead of then leading and still taking charge of that job knowing it's unsafe? And I think that's where the teachers that are stuck are in that element of what I see of, if you know it's that bad and you're not going to do
yeah,
or say it's that bad and you're still working for the company, you've got to be taking some responsibility of how that looks on you.
yeah. But the thing is, who do they tell? Because the
Well, you
head
just
doesn't
don't,
care. Head
they
doesn't
just,
care.
they just don't do the job. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you mimic the job. A lot of the peer parents that I see are seeing that, getting their skills, and then
Sorry,
going, "That's right.
one sec. Child's just come through. Can
Oh,
you
you're right.
don't you
Hello."
follow through? Are you starving, hungry? Okay, go and get a snack then. I'll deal with the dog. You all right? Okay.
Hmm.
She needs a
Right,
snack. She's
officer.
starving to
Go on.
death.
No, it's just, no, but
But
I'm
yeah,
not like I'm not trying to say it in a way. I'm just to get the question out there because I'm just thinking if I was in that setting again, that would make me again with my ADHD. I'd be like, no, forget that. Then I'll leave and make
yeah,
it better for the one. So like I see a lot of teachers that do then go, oh, well, this ain't going to work. I cross over. But then the ones that are
yeah,
left, it leaves them in a vulnerable position because it's almost like if you know this is happening, you are still again the front phase leading this. So if you
yeah.
knew it was going to take, if it was a war and you knew you was going to go to war and you knew that like, you was going to lose 5 people and you said that was a bad idea, would you still take them? Like,
But it's where do they turn? So a lot of the teachers who leave the profession because they feel like they're letting send kids down, go to send schools. That's great. We love them. They're brilliant. They've already changed their
yeah,
mindset, right? Others, they can go to SLT and say, I don't want to do the Amazon thing. And they'll be like, well, tough. And then they can go to the executive head, say, don't want to do the Amazon thing. And he'll say, well, tough. And then their next step is going to the union and saying, I don't want to do the Amazon thing. And then the union's got like a million other people saying they don't want to do their Amazon thing because it's unsafe. The union's not got enough capacity. Do you know what I mean?
so is
There's
it the
no,
same as like with parents? So when you try to report to school as a parent, you get nowhere. And
yeah,
that's very sad to see that this happens to teachers too. And that's actually
yeah,
that explains a lot.
yeah. There is
Yeah.
like, and you can't like, I know we say walk out, don't do it, but we
But if,
can't ask
who are they going to
teachers to,
replace you with?
well, there's that, but also
Mm,
there's we can't ask teachers don't walk out of your job because that's then putting your family in a
yeah.
hold. Do you know what I mean? And the next school you go to could be worse.
Mm.
But I have hope. And I have hope because of the ECTs, the early career teachers. Genuinely have big hope because of them. Because the ones that I've worked with, they're already in the mindset. And like you said before, that was with the TikTok. I genuinely think it's because Send is more visible now.
Mm.
And we need to keep pushing that visibility. But we maybe need to start moving that visibility away from Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and into more mainstream press
I,
because
but
that's what the older teachers who are struggling to get their heads around it. We
this
need
is
to be
where
in the Daily Mail.
this is where the council gets involved though. That's what I said. That's where there's that barrier that there is all this access out there, and they still won't take it
Yeah,
under the wing of a council, which is really mad. It's really baffling. It's almost like the council. I think they're very old school in the sense of they feel like the more money something is, the better it's going to be. So they can't, I think when someone comes and goes, we'll do it for free, they're like, well, it's going to be crap, or why would you want that, or what value is that going to be when they've got people saying, we'll do this for £1,000? And they're like, well, then that makes sense. Like, why
Yeah.
would someone
Yeah.
sacrifice that money? Especially if you've got a business mind and that's your role. It's not going to make
Yeah.
sense why someone's going to come and offer all of this for free, because it's obviously going to be rubbish. And then you've got to do the checks, you've got to trust it. It's just, it's a hard thing to get, but I get it. It's around it. It's around everywhere. And to get that, I think what's going to happen is it's just going to get into families. So people have real life experience. And I think that's where it's going to bring it into life. So instead of saying, I
Mm.
saw on TikTok, it's going to say, well, my son or my grandchild or my
Yeah.
sister, my cousin. And that's where it becomes normal in society. And I do think that
Yeah.
what we do need to do in the defense of the teachers, and I do defend teachers sometimes, is if we are saying what we're saying about this not being a minority, we need to start treating that every kid can't have a one-to-one. Every kid can't have this individual help. Because if you think about that on the scale of times 5, what we
Yeah.
ask for sometimes is very unreasonable if you think that there's another 4 people in that class that need the same. So you've got to, I know it's an awkward, horrible situation. I know it's not great because we want the best for our kids. But in this day and age, and if it's going to be something that's going to be half the class, you cannot expect 6, 7 teachers to a class. That's not functional. You need to
Yeah.
set it in a group setting away with neurotypical people in a classroom together, everything that works for everything
Yeah.
humanity. So I think that's the approach that we need to start asking for. And the things we ask for as parents need to be something that can be reciprocated across the class.
See, part of the issue now, right? My youngest child's just moved primary schools. And she has gone from a class of 36 to a class of 17. She's still in a mainstream primary. It's a smaller class size. And it's made all the difference to her. Now, as far as we're aware, I've got my suspicions, but as far as we're aware so far, no extra needs, but it's made all the difference to her.
Mhm.
Staffing ratios are ridiculous. That was one teacher with 36 7 and 8-year-olds. Now, I've never.
Can we just, and just on that, can any parent
Now,
out there give you 5, 6 kids and tell you to stay with them? I know they're going to say that to me as well. And I know I've been called out in the comments for that, or you teach a class. But without the SEN needs, let's not underplay what 36 children at the same time,
yeah,
maybe before puberty or going through puberty, would be like. Like,
yeah,
I'm not saying it's
yeah.
easy. I'm just saying that your reality's changed, that there is neurodiversity in there as well, so you have to bend. That's,
But
yeah,
this is it. This is my point. So what we're doing is in a lot of academies, again with the academies, rather than having 12 extra TAs to up the staffing ratios, and I mean properly trained TAs, not just someone's nan who needs a little job. Rather than having 12 TAs, we're having 4 deputy heads.
Right.
And there's a deputy head for every tiny, and then underneath them, there's an assistant deputy head each of the deputy heads. Like, the leadership structures in schools are insane. And instead of let's minimize the leadership and actually invest the money where it will benefit the children, we've not. So our staffing ratios are ridiculous. There's a huge shortage of TAs anyway.
Mm.
And now no one's sort of employing, no one's upping their staffing ratios by using properly trained TAs. There's also the
No.
fact that in order to recruit TAs, so the first job I went into after I went back to work after having my children, bearing in mind I'm qualified in about a billion different things, but supporting teaching and learning for autistic and learning disabled students for a start, a million other things. The job I went into as a TA1, because the time worked better for small children, was yeah. Now that's
Is that even minimum wage?
that's just about minimum wage, because you don't work the full 52. So it's minimum wage across the weeks
Oh,
that you.
I used to get paid like that.
Yeah.
38 weeks and you get paid through the holidays still. So they cut it. Yeah.
Yeah, they take your 11 months pay and spread it out over 12.
Yeah.
12 and a half grand, right? And that was for going in and making sure that people's children were safe, were supported, were happy, were learning. That sounds a bit more important than 12 and a half grand. The next
It
job,
does.
yeah. The next job I went to was mainstream standalone academy, working in their SEND department as the TA for nurture groups. So nurture groups are supposed to be small groups supported by a consistent TA or team of TAs that are always all together, It's supposed to be a time limited provision to essentially give kids a break. It's supposed to be you spend break time together, you eat lunch together, and you're very much a cohesive unit while these children learn to feel safe and secure in school. Um, that's not how these nurture groups work. They were literally just small group teaching. So I was in charge of these children. So in my first year, I was with year 11 and I had 9. Um, Obviously, year 11, it's their GCSE year. So we're going through all kinds of exam prep, all that sort of stuff, supporting them through the of exams, making sure that all their access arrangements were in place with the exams coordinator, all that sort of thing, keeping up to date with their paperwork, EHCP reviews, all that sort of stuff. The next year I was given the year 7 nurture group. Now nurture group's capped at 12 to 25 kids. The majority of whom had EHCPs that I needed to keep on top of, helping them transition into secondary school, all that sort of stuff. That was £20,000 a year. The job that I left at the independent special school that I desperately want to go back to. I'm not in it for the pay, but it would be nice to have the skills recognised. Yeah, I was a class TA. These kids were mostly ASD, a lot of PDA, which was helpful for me learning those skills to deal with my child. ADHD, a lot of them with complex and challenging distress behaviours. So my group was sort of 6 to 8 kids in charge of. So we had IEPs, so individualized education plans that were built from their EHCPs and their targets to break down meeting them. We were in charge of writing those. We were in charge of day-to-day care. We were in charge of contact with families, monitor and learning. We had to monitor sort of their emotional state through a computer. So much responsibility for £22,000 a year. And again, we are in charge of human beings who are at risk if we don't do our job properly.
It's crazy. That,
And they're
it,
wondering why no one wants to be a TA.
no, I find this with support workers as well, because when I used to be registered manager as well, and support workers, but they get paid more than that now. And if again, it's more hours because they're doing so many, like they could do 12-hour
Yeah,
shifts instead. But that was a massive, massive issue because if you get in support work, you get a lot of people that just want the job and it will go out, will be drinking, come back in the next day.
yeah,
And to sizzle that out, you need to, Marcus would be pay what you think it's right, pay more. There should be some of these homes that they're going into and they're just support workers that and even 3 to 1 that has still got the chance of getting, their teeth knocked out that day, and they're getting
yeah,
paid £11 an hour. Are you joking? Because no one else will do that. Like that's some high risk money, and they don't put that involved, which then creates a vacuum of people that would be only wanting that for a quick buck or quick money,
yeah,
which then you get mixed people, don't you? People that really want to try, but no, it's not enough, and then really, really don't
yeah,
care and just take the paycheck.
yeah. You have to look as well. I mean, this is going to be me going off on a big feminist rant, but you have to sort of look at the history of these jobs. So TA, traditionally a female job. Care work, traditionally a female job. So it's paid less because we just are.
Mm.
They've not changed it. There is also this view that TAs, like I say, it's someone's mum or someone's nan who just wants a little part-time job. And maybe back in the day it was, but our role has changed dramatically from what it used to be. It's no longer going in and sitting and reading with kids. It's so much
No,
more. It's supporting their education, supporting their social, emotional, mental health, supporting their physical health a lot of the time. It's communicating with parents. It's um that day to day with
yeah,
the students. And it's never like a lot of it isn't teacher directed anymore either. We're taking kids out for intervention. We're doing small group work ourselves to bring kids up to an equivalent level with others. The job has changed beyond all recognition, but the compensation for it and the respect for it hasn't.
no, yeah, I'd second that actually. To be fair. I think it's annoying as well because ultimately, where I've worked before and places even been when I was in support work all the way up to being in management, I assume naively that this training and stuff that's meant to be in schools was reciprocated because I got it everywhere else I went, and it's not. And it seems very silly, again, going back to support workers, that I can honestly say, even the ones that were going out drinking every day, they still knew that person they were supporting to a better degree than any of these kind of teachers seem to know their kids. And it's
Yeah,
like, that was just because we told them. And it's like, no one, it's again about ethos and stuff like that about it. that was just part of it. Like, again, you're talking about support workers being able to do stuff like medication for the day. You're thinking, and now in the school setting, you'll be like, oh, only a deputy head to be able to do that. And it's like
No,
not
that's on T
enabling.
if you have a school that doesn't have a school nurse, 90% of the time medication is on TAs.
Oh, it is on TAs.
Yeah, yeah.
So you go.
So we've got that responsibility as well for if that
But
goes
this is what
wrong,
I'm
if
saying.
it goes really
So
wrong.
you're, I can see TAs being the support workers of the school, and if that's the sense, you can't underestimate what they're kind of doing in that role. And do you need to provide the again? It's a that's part of that would be something you put at the forefront because you wouldn't say much else. If medication training was something that comes up regularly that you do again, if something goes wrong, you go back and you retrain.
Yeah,
It's stuff like that that's over the top, but it gives that person a most amazing chance. And what you'll see is, as you said, the respect will go up who's paid more. And if you actually acknowledge that that's probably the harder job in the classroom, I know it's probably going to be, but if you think that in a sense of a teacher has been trained for 3 years at uni and gone to this and learned intensively knowledge about how to do this, and a TA could
yeah,
be someone with only real life experience, and then is asked to
yeah,
do all the extra things that a teacher's not qualified or been trained to do. And it's
yeah,
almost like that whole thing about the training is where professionals go wrong because you don't need a certificate and you don't need a 3 year course because this world day and age, there's YouTube, there's this, there's that. You learn so
yeah,
quickly, so much abler. And by you
yeah,
learning 3 years out, you're actually taking yourself out of the real world for 3 years. So the TA that does come in that has been in the real world for the whole
yeah,
time is going to be a step ahead of you. If you started at the same time, that TA is going to outperform you.
yeah,
Like, yeah,
yeah. As I say, it's just like the training aspect for TAs is abysmal. Um, so many are employed, like I say, term time only, no insets, and no extra time at the end of the school day, just for the school day. I don't know when they're supposed to learn. I don't know where their opportunities are to sort of further themselves, further their knowledge. If they get put with a child who has a presentation like my child with PDA, if they're working with someone with PDA for the first time, how are they supposed to fit in learning about that? Because they can choose to do it in their own time. And so many TAs do. So many TAs will go home and research and they will ask school for the funds for training and end up doing that training in their lunch times or at home because there's no other time. They are giving their time because they want to do what's right for the child.
yeah,
Until that ethos change, let's invest in TAs. Let's like this 200 million that they're giving to train teachers. Great. Let's expand that. We'll have to pay more money because it's only 300 odd quid per teacher anyway. But let's expand that. Let's expand that to all pupil facing staff so that everyone is on the same wavelength. Everyone is at the same level when it comes to SEND. Because, I mean, let's face it, if there's a weak link, a SEND child will find that weak link.
oh, 100%,
So
yeah.
let's get everyone trained to the same level so there's no weak links.
Is there still,
Let's
there's
not
still,
just focus it on teachers. Let's do everyone.
you might not want to answer, but is there still that? So I know this from my experience at school and some talk to people still now. Teachers still treat TAs like crap as well, don't they? To a certain
It
degree. In the
depends
sense
on,
of not as in like abusive, like saying you do, but
yeah,
it's in the sense of they don't value a TA's worth in the sense of what they do and what they can do and don't use them and don't they kind of see them as being like kind of like kind of like the dishwashers instead of being like the important part of the machine that they are. They're like you should be respected half and half with a teacher.
it depends. Again, it depends on the setting and the type of teacher. So in special schools, no, TAs are
Hmm.
valued immensely. Those schools know that they couldn't operate without TAs. Um, in mainstream schools, again, it varies. So you have your ECTs or NQTs, as they used to be called, who value the TAs because they have no clue what they're doing and the TA's there as backup. And they want to learn from us because we know what we're doing. We've been doing it for a while and we're more appropriate, more approachable than the teachers. You have other teachers who are, no, I've got this. It's fine, I've got this. And you kind of have to jump in and you're desperately trying not to overstep because you don't want the children's respect for the teacher to diminish because
That's
you've
just what I
stepped
mean.
in.
Yeah.
It's a balancing act.
Yeah, but it's or even that. It's just it just seems very misogynistic. And I was answering this earlier. It just seems this whole thing is very back in that 80s where, and even the comments that I'm hearing the teachers are saying to, and these are like women teachers saying about oh, it's because you ain't got a husband. It's leaving it at home, and this whole
Yeah,
thing just seems to be back in this misogynistic time where it's
yeah,
like, yeah, it's just yeah,
yeah. It is, and but I mean, I think it's different. So it's different with primary and secondary. So primary school people are a bit like, oh, well, why is that man working in a primary school? Why is that man in a primary school? And then you get to secondary and it's like, well, why is that woman a head teacher? And it's like, because anyone can do both. You don't use your private
yeah,
parts and it's really frowned against and a bit of a safeguarding risk. So anyone can do any job.
yeah,
But there is from, because of how much the job's changed, and it has changed immensely in the last, I'd say 10, 12 years with the rise of kids with SEND in the classroom. Um, because our role has changed, but what people think about our role hasn't. Like the outside view of our role hasn't changed. We are just the people who go in and sit and do some reading with the kids. Whereas now
well,
we have to have a baseline of knowledge of like at least a tiny little bit in all of SEND. You can't possibly know all of SEND off the top of your head, but you have to have a reasonable amount of knowledge in all the areas that you're likely to come across in school, because that's what you'll be supporting.
yeah, that's it. And I think the best advice I'd give as well is what you just said, coming off the knowledge thing, is there is no right and wrong way to do this. And again, what you can run the risk of is we've been talking a lot about training, and you rely on that training to be your fit to be able to give you all the answers. The advice I would give is always get as much knowledge as you can from as many different sources, and then you filter that through into what works for you. And more importantly, that individual. Because again, what you don't want to do
Yeah.
with training is categorize these kids to all be the same. And I think that's the next thing that's going to come is with
Yeah.
training, it is very government funded. It's going to be very old and textbook. People bought in, don't like
Prescriptive.
this, don't like this.
Yeah.
When realistically, in a whole, what you need to do the better part I give is learn as much about every condition, and then every child will display certain bits of that differently. It's never going to be the same
Yeah.
fit. So
So
you just,
this is
yeah,
where, so one of the things that the independent school did really well is if a pupil was struggling, then they'd put a call out. So anyone who was involved with that child in any way could go along to just to sit around a table with a cup of coffee and talk about what works and what doesn't, and what we feel needs to be put in place. So in that school, it could have been teachers, TAs, heads, SALT, OT, the psychologist, the pastoral team, literally anyone with any involvement in that child could go and sit and talk about that child and say, well, this is working well. That's not working. Can we swap that out for that? Can we get this put in place for this child? There's none of that. Like, if you've got a child who's, let's say, misbehaving in school, it goes to the head of year, deputy head of year, and it's detention or it's being shut in an isolated room all day. For some kids, I'm not being funny, but that's heaven. That's a nice, quiet space, and that's all they've
that's
wanted.
what they've
So
been
they're
asking for the whole time they've been in school.
yeah, they're going to do the same thing the next day so they can go to the nice, quiet space that they really, really need. There's the behaviour policy, and and the behaviour policy is followed. There's
It's
no
the number
fettering.
one policy in school, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no fettering discretion. There's no understanding behind the behaviour. It's like, well, like I said to my daughter the other day, you don't boot a door for no reason, right? Example, kid boots door, kid goes to detention. The reason the kid booted the door has not been solved. So the kid boots the door the
You can
next day,
ask.
goes to isolation, right? At no point does someone step in and say, why is this happening? What can we do?
Yeah, look,
But
what's the matter, mate? Is everything all right? No, the first thing I say to him is attention. You can't hit the
yeah,
door.
yeah. At no point, I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes you get an amazing, usually the deputy heads of year who are more pastoral staff, but I've worked with some amazing deputy heads of year who do go out of their way and say, what's going on? I'm not, we're not going to detention. We're not going to isolation. You're coming with me to my office. We're going to have a drink and we're going to sit down and we're going to talk through what the hell's going on, because this isn't okay. But the majority of the time, and especially again, I'm going back to it, but with teachers who've been in the profession for a while and they're used to just following that behaviour process, it is just right, detention, isolation, fixed term exclusion, permanent exclusion, boom, done. You're someone else's problem now.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it's
they get
that first.
shipped off to an AP. And if they're lucky in that AP, they find someone who goes, oh my God, you are rampantly ADHD and we really need to get this sorted out.
Yeah,
Um, and then things are put in place and it's great, but it doesn't have to be in the end, things are put in place. We
No.
had the same problem with my daughter. It wasn't until, so year 2, she started with EBSA. Year 3, the EBSA carried on. I went to her first parents' evening and said, like, year 2, I'd raised my suspicions, and they said, no, we don't see it in school, which is my least favourite phrase in the entire world. Because if you don't see it in school now, you will soon. Year 3, I went in, raised my concerns with the teacher, and she went through a list of things that my child was accessing: timeout pass, ear defenders, all that sort of stuff. And she's like, no, we're not seeing any signs of autism in school. And I was like, are you sure? Because you're just giving me this list. So I let it slide. And then in year 4, she had an amazing teacher who was like, yeah, we really need to talk about your kid. And she went onto the pathway. By year 5, she was out of the classroom because nothing had been put in place earlier to support her being in the classroom. And then in year 6, she got a 1-to-1 and she got the robot, and she was partly back in the classroom. But it was an in the end solution that if it had been put in
It's too late,
place,
yeah.
if support had been put in place at the start, we wouldn't have needed the in the end. So
That's it.
the biggest bit of the mindset shift for me is not looking at behaviour as behaviour, looking at behaviour as communication.
Yeah.
But there's a whole generation of teachers out there who are trained that behaviour is behaviour,
It
and
doesn't
that
matter.
you,
It's been brought
yeah,
up like that, isn't it? Like, it doesn't matter. Kids are seen what meant to be seen, not heard. That thing.
yeah, yeah. And that you
Yeah.
choose every behaviour. Now, I'm pretty sure that these teachers don't choose every behaviour. I'm pretty sure that when they've had a rough day in school, they aren't choosing to sit on the couch and cry into a glass of wine. That in the
No.
moment, they need that. So it's that seeing, it's almost seeing kids as human beings, as fallible human beings who sometimes aren't in control, who are probably less in control than we are as adults because we've had time to practice.
Mm.
They haven't yet. But that is the main mindset shift. Now, that shift for some staff will only come through training. Now, I know now that ECTs are taught behaviours communication. Great. There's a generation of teachers who weren't taught that, who are going to struggle to switch from what they've learned. So let's give them evidence. There are so many studies out there and so many books have been written. Like there's this Paul Dix, When the Adults Change. And it's all evidence that behaviour is communication, and this is how you do it. You don't shout at a kid because that's going to escalate
Well,
them. If
I think
they're
that
already
happens
stressed,
quite often, doesn't it? Yeah.
yeah. But if they're already stressed, don't stress them out even more. Don't escalate it. You did, I think the most helpful thing that I've done, and I've done it in 2 schools, and this is not going to go down well, but we had training in de-escalation and restraint in 2 of the schools that I've worked in to keep us and others safe. I think I could count on less than a hand the amount of times that I've had to use the restraint side of things. But the de-escalation I used day in, day
Mhm.
out. So let's get that side of things into every school. The
Yeah.
de-escalation, the way that teachers are dealing with behaviours that are actually communication, so that they're not making it worse for kids who are already struggling, and so that that child can get back to learning
Yeah.
faster, so that that child doesn't end up on a pathway to an AP, which, yeah, might be the best thing in the world for them in the end, but it doesn't have to be in the end. Let's get it
Yeah.
in there with
The
the
last
early
resort.
support. But in
That's it.
order to do that, teachers need to know what behaviours to look out for, because they're still looking for the fidgety ADHD kid, the staring off into space ADHD kid. They're looking for the autistic kids with their hands over their ears, or the autistic kid with a fidget, or the autistic kid rocking back and forth. They're looking for the dyslexic kid who can't read but can write, or can write but can't read, or do you know what I mean? They're looking at this overall stereotyped view of how these children will present. Now, if we give them all the information on actually this is what autism is, you've heard it's a social communication problem, but actually we've got executive dysfunction, we've got adaptive dysfunction, we've got auditory processing issues, we've got interoceptive issues, we've got proprioceptive issues. Do you know, we've got, like, I shocked teachers by telling them the way 8 senses.
But
Let's
if
get that.
just on a final note before I cause any more controversy, but being a person of being mixed race, I really struggle with this whole mindset of teachers and having to train the teachers to change their mindset when they're wrong.
Yeah.
When I'm sure after segregation and that was happening, you'd have people that still didn't like black people, and there's still people like now. Doesn't mean you accepted it, and you don't just throw evidence to them to say, look, really, you need to be nice to these
Yeah.
kids now. If that's not normally built into you to see what's in front of your face right now, I question the teacher. Do you see what I'm saying? Like I question that because if we're going, oh, we have to go and train these teachers because they won't change because they've got old school and they're doing this. But the reality is, times will change. You can't say that anymore. You can't just be racist anymore. And if you want to display that anymore, that's not okay. And I think that needs to be said too. That as much as you want to have your opinion about it, that's fine, but that's your own
Yeah.
opinion. That doesn't get reciprocated in your practice.
Yeah.
It's a
I get
difference,
that.
isn't it?
The thing is, yeah, different in a way though, because what teachers are doing is reacting to someone's behaviour, not who someone is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I'm sure that again, when I'm sure that there have
So
been black people portrayed fighting or being like this, and they would have gone, see, they're always fighting or they're causing problems just because they're the only black person in the school that's going through trouble and you're not helping them. So it's the same
yeah,
issue. It's like if you know the crisis in front of you, it's on the news, it's everywhere. It's too big of an issue for this to be a minority anymore. And it's
yeah,
we're still having to beg these teachers to then bend their ways just to see if it's even possible this happen, then they shouldn't be in a job. The
yeah,
time was expired. Do you know what I mean? I mean, there's a
yeah,
limit. As what you're saying about the education and knowing that behaviour means something else, that's
yeah,
different. But to completely rule it out and not change the teaching practice or be open to changing the teaching practice, that's why I find it uncomfortable about these people still being in teaching jobs.
yeah. And I get that. And there are some teachers who
Mm.
definitely won't change. That's standard. That's standard across the board. You have people who are given new information and decide not to use that information in every single walk of life. But the majority of teachers, if you give them new information, will go, oh, okay,
Mm.
we'll change that then. Um,
Yeah.
like I say, the ECTs who are coming up now and will be the next education leaders, that's already built in. That flexibility of thought is already built in because they've come through a system from when they were in primary school where send was
Mm.
to it then becoming visible, and they've already had to do the mental gymnastics to go, oh, okay, well, yeah, send exists, we need to do something about it. They've done their mental gymnastics. Some teachers who've been in the job a while are maybe a little bit too inflexible for mental gymnastics, but some can still do it. But they need to be given, like I say, I think it's an hour's training on all of send in a school year. That's not
Well, I
enough,
think,
is it?
yeah, and I think
All
there's
of
again,
send. And if
going to
you've took,
unis for that,
if
going for
you've took,
unis for that. Okay, sorry.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But they go to uni and they do all their teaching training and they can do their teaching practice and they do their teaching practice in a mainstream school. And then they have something called a contrasting provision that they go to, right? That doesn't have to be a special school. That could be that they've been teaching in an inner city school and they go to a rural school. There is no guarantee that in their training that they've actually worked with kids.
They
Yeah, with
probably wouldn't have.
complex SEND or worked with teachers with the huge experience that SEND teachers have. There's no guarantee that they've had that exposure. They will have had that exposure. They just didn't realise that Tommy, who kept forgetting his pen, was ADHD because they've
Yeah.
not had the information to work out, excuse me, that's why Tommy kept forgetting his pen. Yeah? We
Mm.
need to explicitly teach that people exist for a start. We need to explicitly teach what to look out for, that it's not just twiddly McTwiddlyson or stare at the ceiling, Joe. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
nuance not being put out there for teachers.
I think they again, as I said, with the training they get in uni, I think what they need to do is realise that training is not do and die, and they've still got a lot to learn after they come out of that training. And
Yeah,
what I mean by that is we're never going to be able to teach a class. We haven't got the knowledge they've got, and they're very clever to be able to teach a teacher. But
yeah,
what I've learned from the SEND community is no one's a professional other than other. There's no hierarchy.
yeah,
Even a parent that hasn't even got a company or never even looked at that will still be equal in the side of SM world.
yeah,
And I think that's what
yeah,
teachers need to realise coming out that they need their people are there. There's TAs there. There's parents there. There people that will help you. You just need to make the approach of being approachable for one, and
yeah,
someone that actually seems to want to get their approach and help and not being seen to
yeah.
cut off from it. I think that's yeah.
I fully agree. I mean, as a SEND
Mm,
parent, absolutely fully agree. I am the one who knows my child and her needs best. As a professional, as a TA, parents are our go-to.
mm,
Like, if I see something like a new emergent behaviour, I'm on the phone to a parent saying, I've seen this. Is this happening at home? What are your thoughts? How are you approaching this at home so that I can continue that in school so it's continuous? And I then feed that back to the teacher. Schools don't listen to parents.
No.
Schools as a whole don't listen to parents. Individuals within schools do listen to parents. Often those individuals don't have as much sway as they probably should. So I
No.
know in my daughter's school, the Senko doesn't listen to me, but the head of her base does. But the head of her base is under the Senko. So
Yeah, so it's
she's
kind of
guppered in what she can
pointless.
do. So teachers can listen to parents, absolutely, and they do need to do it more. There needs to be more communication between actual teachers and parents. Easier in primary school than in secondary because your kid's got like 9 million teachers in secondary school and there's just the one in primary. So it's trickier, but it's doable. Um, but then it's the people higher up as well that have to listen, even if listening is going to cost them money.
Yeah, I don't think that level. I think it's going to have to be through definitely generations of them people getting in. Because again, as I said, the job role is always going to be at the moment the way schools are run is about effectiveness and money when you talk about
Mm,
budgets. So, but again, as a teacher, again, if there's advice that you would ever listen to me, it would be if you're going to do one thing, is even if you can't do anything about it, just listen, just attempt to listen, just practice. Look what it's like, practice what it like body language about what it's like to reciprocate. So, just a slight change of body count, just that will make such a difference. You don't have to do anything now, you don't have to change anything, but just coming
yeah,
across like asking what to do at home, like you just said, would mean so much
yeah,
to these parents. You have
yeah.
no idea. It's not that we're asking you to go change your lifestyle, change it. Just become reasonable people like we know you are. Just become again, stop fighting and
There's
becoming the
also,
peace.
yeah, also talk to parents before something becomes a problem.
Yeah,
Don't talk to me when she's already barricaded herself in a room and isn't coming out and you need me to do hostage negotiation. Call me 10 minutes before that when she's escalating and you can't calm her down because I'll tell you how to do it. And she won't end up
yeah,
barricaded in a room and I won't have to hostage negotiate my child.
yeah.
There's a timeliness to it as well. I think sometimes as a parent, it does feel like every call you get from school is a negative. It's this bad things happened, this bad things happened, this bad things happened. It's never a, well, hey. I mean, I've always tried to give positives as much as possible to parents because I know how it feels. Um, but yeah, it needs to be timely communication to find out how to deal with things. That I think for teachers means admitting that you don't know.
And
And
that's
I think,
again, that's the ego
yeah,
comes into it, isn't it?
that's that mindset. You have to go, actually, in this situation, I'm not the teacher. I need to be the student. I don't know, which I imagine when you're used to being the person who knows and the person with the answers is quite tricky,
Yeah.
but does need to be done.
Again, that's exactly where I come from and where I am now. And again, with the bigger the apps getting, the more I'm putting into that role of my professionalism. I'm saying it less and less because it doesn't matter. Send parenting is a professionalism, and I'm learning so much from regular parents other than you would think that if I go to like I've got loads of people that work in professional fields and advocacy, but the stuff you learn off the parents is
Yeah.
incredible. And they
Yeah.
again because of the way that world has had to shape with an SEN parent, these parents are not just normal parents, they are professional parents. They've had to learn
Yeah.
SEN more. They know what they're talking about. They're not just coming in to saying, I want my kids to be supported naively. Maybe few and few between now, but mostly they're coming up evidence based. They know what their rights are. They know exactly what they should be doing for their kid. They know a lot more than even the person they're talking to knows most of the time. And I
Yeah.
think until teachers need to understand it's not a weakness, it's just a different field. You can't learn everything. So if you've
Yeah.
learned uni 3 years, you've done that, you've mastered that. The
Yeah.
parent will never do that. So instead of wasting time trying to do what the parent does, why don't you just get the knowledge? Skips the years.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what my ideal would be is that because there's like a recruitment issue for TAs is let's get everybody's kids supported in schools by employing a load of send parents because we know
Yeah,
what we're doing already. We
yeah,
don't need as much training. Give us jobs. Give
yep,
us the option for being part-time or job share with each other so we can all manage our school runs and all that sort of stuff. And get us into schools whether as,
absolutely.
like I say, ideally as TAs, but we want better pay. Ideally as TAs, but get us in to talk to, like what like you're doing, get us in to talk to professionals, because we know we've done, and it doesn't, we've not just done, like, people take the mick with, like, you did your training on Instagram, and it's like, yeah, but there are actual neurodivergent voices out there telling me so I follow a neurodivergent OT and a neurodivergent SALT, and they've given me information that has helped my child and that has
Mm.
changed my practice, because not only are they professionals, they're also neurodivergent. They know what will actually help.
Yeah.
They know what is neuroaffirming, rather than me doing things with my child, that are going to impact their mental health.
Yeah.
Those people are going to help me more than a non-neurodivergent professional might.
Yeah.
Um, so let's,
Just utilize each other
it-
and grow. That's it.
yeah,
That's it. That's it. I think that's an amazing little note to wrap it up on. I think that has been an amazing little podcast. I think there could be some amazing clips in there, and more importantly, I think that it's been a good insightful conversation. I said, I think we kind of talked about quite well about the issues that faced even the side, like our teachers are not as free as you think even about Sen. The
yeah,
hierarchy, a teacher would be in a completely different role. I mean, we've covered quite a lot. I think it's good that it'd be quite beneficial for parents and other professionals to listen to and hear. Um, just kind of how it is, put it all together. I suppose you probably hear bits of it, isn't it? But when you get like the whole experience, like we've kind of tied down in the
yeah,
last hour, it's kind of you can kind of see where the issues flag up and where they flag up and
yeah,
why one thing you think will be a simple fix isn't a simple fix because it actually then causes a hole here. Like so,
yeah.
yeah, it's been great. Thank you for your time today as well, and sharing all of that.
No,
It's been
thank you
great.
for just letting me rant about education.
No, it's been great. I'd happily do again. I think what would happen would be natural to do another follow up about this about maybe pinpoint it, maybe even one just on TAs and roles, or do you like narrowing it down a bit because I think there's a lot more we could talk about in schools,
Yeah,
specific bits about it that would really help. I'm happy, more than happy to do it.
yeah, cool.
So yeah, but no, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, good luck editing.